You know that one song you can't get enough of? Chances are it was made with a sample from Splice. Explore top packs made by your favorite producers, sketch out song ideas in seconds with Create Mode, and dive into a sample catalog that's so deep, it's dangerous. Find out why Splice is the industry's not-so-secret secret. Visit splice.com and try for free today. Welcome to the Fader interview. I'm Alex Robert Ross, editorial director of The Fader. It's always been difficult to tell where reality ends and the cartoon world begins with Gorillaz. The band's 4 animated members, blue-haired lead singer 2D, Satan-worshipping bassist Murdoch, zen-minded guitarist Noodle, and intermittently possessed drummer Russell Hobbs, give their own interviews, produce weird podcasts, and appear on stage as larger-than-life projections. There's a deep and proudly absurd lore around the band, one that's impossible to summarize in a reasonably sized book, much less a podcast introduction. If the band's real-life founders, Blur frontman Damon Albarn and graphic artist Jamie Hewlett, are ever in the spotlight, they're at least sharing it with their creations. That's allowed Albarn in particular a much-needed measure of freedom. A quarter century ago, when he and Hewlett formed the band in their West London apartment, Blur still came with expectations, pressures, unwelcome critical attentions that Albarn couldn't shake. Gorillaz initially created a diversion, allowing him to experiment with hip-hop and dub, funk and afrobeat, punk and electropop. As the project grew, he started collaborating more, bringing in De La Soul, MF Doom, Lou Reed, Marky Smith. 2020's sprawling Song Machine project had at least one collaborator on every song, and the sounds and ideas were even more varied than the names on the track list. Maybe the cartoon world made the real world a bit more vivid. Gorillaz' 8th studio album, Cracker Island, is a more focused affair. There are huge names here, Thundercat, Stevie Nicks, Bad Bunny, but only a handful. The official lore around it involves the band moving to Los Angeles, where Murdoch tries to set himself up as a cult leader, partly because he's obsessed with the cult next door, which his bandmate 2D has enthusiastically signed up to. But beneath the farce, Cracker Island is about the internet age, about confected realities and the egotists who push them, the rubble of misinformation. It's the cartoon world trying to make sense of the real world and, occasionally, coming up without answers. As Albarn explained when I spoke to him yesterday, it's an idea that's been simmering beneath Gorillaz since the beginning. There's a lot to dig into on this record, and a lot to dig into over the last few years, I guess. I wanted to start with Song Machine, which obviously is this sprawling project packed with collaborators.
I mean, it sort of somehow made sense as an album, but it certainly wasn't made as an album. It was just like, we just kept going on, during lockdown. It's like, can we somehow put a song out a month? That was the sort of vibe, and we're stopped when either we can't do it anymore or something else happens, So that's how we did it. And then we just sort of we put them all together in the end. But I mean, no, this record's actually got a narrative. It's a totally different thing.
But you started it thinking that it might be another Song Machine, right?
I don't know if I did, really. No. Once I started this, it was like, no, I'm doing this in LA, and it's going to sound like this. It's a different thing. Song Machine is a different thing. I mean, this is the beauty of Gorillaz. Is that really we can sort of make it up as we go along, and we do.
So when did you know that you had that sort of narrative, that you had a through line here that you wanted to dig into properly?
Well, it's just sort of, how do I feel about LA? How do I feel about the world at the moment? And how can I somehow put that through my own emotional cipher? It's a sort of blueprint for making a record somewhere, for it having a kind of geography. And Gorillaz is all about geography in a sense, because we have this metaverse, and we've had it for a long time, so it's accumulated a lot of space in it. The psychogeography is quite huge, You can travel around to different eras and different parts of the universe or the world, or the island indeed.
On Cracker Island it was born, to the collective of the dawn. They were planting seeds at night, to grow a made-up paradise, where the truth was auto-tuned, and its sadness I consumed into my formats every day. In the end I had to pay.
Your attitude towards LA seems to have developed.
It's softened.
Yes, that's the word for it. Yeah.
Softened hugely. I used to really kind of actively not enjoy myself, like quite deliberately. I'm not going to enjoy myself here. And then suddenly I sort of realised that it was a very creative place and full of men, full of so many possibilities that you get lost in it, you know. And that's how I sort of chose to sort of approach making the record.
There was an intentional part of you that went into LA not wanting to enjoy it. Was it just that sort of?
No. That's been the case for like the last 30 years, because I always used to arrive either by plane and get driven in a car to Sunset Boulevard, or I'd arrive on a bus onto Sunset Boulevard. And then I wouldn't really leave other than where we were playing until I left Los Angeles. And I didn't drive then, so I was kind of trapped there, you know. And after a while, same view, isn't it? You know, you get a bit. I just didn't feel like I knew LA, and so yeah, I feel I know it a lot better. Obviously, I don't know it completely, but it fascinates me, and I do find it a very inspiring place now.
See, what I find fascinating about this changing relationship with LA is that through the prism of Cracker Island, when you go to LA and you sort of get it for the first time, or you get that positive thing for the first time, it's easy to become a bit of an evangelist for it. But that's not what Cracker Island does. It delves into with a sense of humor, but into a slightly darker side of it, into this sort of Los Angeles occult. Did you read up around like Los Angeles occult history and stuff? Like, how did you dive into that side of it?
Well, I can feel it. There's certain properties I've been to while I've been there that are very clearly cultish, and have been occupied by communities of people who have become very sort of, you know, self-absorbed.
Self-absorption is an interesting way of putting it. I mean, that's sort of what happens to Murdoch to some extent in the lore around this record.
But I mean, he's like traversing the northern hemisphere and as the spectre of Rasputin, you know. He's really taken the Kool-Aid to heart. Once you believe in the power of the Kool-Aid, you want to share it with everyone, don't you? Beware the Kool-Aid.
Have you heard of a guy called Jack Parsons? It's a bit of a detour.
No.
He's a Los Angeles figure who I actually only found out about very recently. He's the inventor of rocket fuel. And he was also a disciple of Aleister Crowley's.
Right, yes. Well, I know all about Crowley because, you know, I studied quite extensively the occult when I was doing Dr. D at the English National Opera.
I was going to ask you about that. Dr. D was the first parallel that I thought of listening to Cracker Island. Was it similar things that inspired both of these?
Well, I mean, I went much more into depth there. This is a different sort of thing, but, you know, it's sort of, I suppose I tuned into those things back then. I mean, I think I've always been quite a devout pagan anyway.
Well, I mean, it's interesting hearing you say it's the sort of self-absorption of certain cult leaders in some way, because that's what it manifests as. Is that what's drawn you to it? Because obviously in the context of Cracker Island, there's a commentary about the internet age and about where we're living right now. But this has gone back sort of really a long way before talking about anything like QAnon or the alt-right or anything.
Yes, but they're all connected, aren't they? You know, the whole idea of a secret society goes a very long way back. It goes right back to the dawn of mankind, the necessity to try and find meaning in the vastness of life, you know?
I've heard you refer to it, at least on this record, like what Cracker Island sort of is. You refer to it as people living in realities that they confect themselves and that people don't want to explore outside of it.
Yes, and I suppose, you know, the island thing is that everyone gravitates to the island where their ideas are understood. Personally, I'm not really on my way to Cracker Island. In fact, you could say my ferry is heading the other way.
This is an interesting thing about the Gorillaz project, though, right? There's no similarities between this just because it's a fiction and that what is happening, say, on these islands that you're talking about are also fictions. But Gorillaz are using and have been using for a long time, for a lot longer than most other cultural artifacts, have been using the internet and have been using these spaces where people can come together on the internet, find like-minded people.
Oh yeah, completely. I mean, we sort of by virtue of when we started, we were right at the beginning of the whole internet age. I mean, I think we had the first virtual world for a band or something. I don't know. You see, I've always been very vague about things like this. For me, it was just, I don't know. I felt that the kind of dystopian aspect of Gorillaz comes out of it being a Frankenstein.
I'd never really considered the dystopian aspect.
I think we set our stall really with Demon Days, and then Plastic Beach obviously was another big kind of sort of idea. And maybe this, is the next big idea really that we've had. So it's been quite a while. I mean, we've put records out in between, but maybe this is, more connected with those albums than the ones in the interim. And that's okay. I mean, you don't always have to be doing the same thing. I'm kind of relaxed about. I just like making music, and it's sort of when it comes, it comes. You don't need to chase it. It's far too elusive to ever think you can actually catch it. It catches you.
It feel like I've been silent running through the infinite pages. I scroll out, searching for a new world. Waits on the sunrise. I'm silent running, I've been back to you. I'm silent running.
Was caught you in quite a profound way on this record, because another thing about Song Machine, of course, is that it's sort of exploding with collaborators. Very few songs even have just one. I think everything, like, there's just constantly voices coming in. And even when you do have collaborators here, and huge collaborators, you've got Stevie Nicks and Beck, and both of them basically sing backup. This feels like a Gorillaz record. Like this feels very pared down in comparison to the Song Machine.
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, Bad Bunny's given complete.
That is true.
Maybe that's just the nature of collaboration. I find that myself. Sometimes, I don't really have to do too much on somebody else's thing for me to be there. You know what I mean? And then sometimes it's entirely on you. So I think it's just being in the room, sharing that joy, and embracing the spirit of collaboration with music as your sort of instrument to travel with.
Obviously with Bad Bunny in particular, you were in the room with him having this sort of quite incredible experience. You were in Jamaica, there's a big storm, right? And that informs the song, I believe, yeah. As you say, there is a big idea here. The way that you're pitching is sort of like maybe the third big idea that Gorillaz have had on a record. I think
it's 20 years of living within the internet, and this is a sort of, it's a reflection on how we metamorphosize as people, us personally and more broadly speaking.
How much of that do you share and discuss with outside collaborators? How do you sit down and talk about that stuff even casually with, say, Bad Bunny or even Stevie Nicks before you record?
Sometimes when we were working with the idea of Plastic, we had a long discussion with Lou Reed. In fact, his riposte was in the song. It's like he explains what it is that he likes about Plastic. He's embracing it. That
helps you to sort of traverse generations, I suppose, as well. I mean, even just here, you've got, you know, the vast space between sort of Stevie Nicks and Bad Bunny, and then, you know, especially with an album about the internet.
But I mean, they do share something in common, you know, being very, very, very popular.
How do you think the popularity affects it? What do you think how do you think that informs?
I don't know. I've never experienced their level of popularity, so I wouldn't know. But, you know, it's nice to be an observer.
Do you really not think you have?
No, I mean, I'm not really, it's not quantifiable like that, is it? The ideas maybe are strong, but you know what I mean? It's like, I've never been a pop artist. Not that really Fleetwood Mac were ever pop, really. So, and Bad Bunny, I mean, he's not pop. Pop has come to him, you know? Do you know what I mean? I don't feel like he's a pop artist. He's more of a phenomena in pop because, you know, he can write, he can sing, he's got very good business acumen, he's very cool, interesting outlook, you know, from a small place, not, you know, from the mainstream at all. And an amazing totem for Latin American sensibility and culture around the world, which in my books is a very positive place to be. You know?
Everything will disappear. Someone's out here. Travel far too many years to nowhere. Nothing here is ever real. You go, fools go. Everything will disappear.
It's interesting hearing you say that you're not a pop artist. I mean, I see what you mean. It doesn't quite exist within pop in the sense that, and I get it from the point of view that when Blur came out, you know, manufactured pop was much more of it was more obvious. It was more, and people were more afraid of it, perhaps for the better, that there was the idea of a manufactured band.
Well, yeah, but because kind of at that point it was very obvious when you weren't kind of involved in the music making, and that didn't matter if the end result had that joy in it. You know what I mean? I don't suppose it really matters actually how it's made. It's the outcome. But I suppose, yeah, if you were in a band, you always thought, well, do they play their own instruments? You know what I mean? It's just inevitable, isn't it? Especially when you're young. It's like, well, I can do this. Can you do that? You know. But now, because everything essentially can be made on a computer, people are not so much discerning about how it's generated. You know, to the point where we're allowing AI generation in music to seep in, you know, in quite an alarming way. And that's why the kind of the truth and being auto-tuned is such a theme, really, in relation to music, but more broadly speaking, we're becoming synthesized, you know, in that sense. We are metamorphizing.
This is what I've been drawn to about Gorillaz, which is that originally, I rewatched that mockumentary you guys made like early on with Krishna Guru Murthy which is really fun.
Yeah. I don't know what I was wearing in there. I sort of thought it was a good idea to wear. I don't know what it was. Anyway, the whole thing was really strange, especially Remy dressed as a Georgian in the broom cupboard.
That bit's almost upsetting. I would say that bit is a bit weird.
It is upsetting, but you know, that's the kind of, we were like that back then. We're quite strange people, really. Fun, but a bit odd.
But there's an interesting conceit behind it. It was fun, but there's also a lot to it. You have one line there, which everything there is kind of a bit of a sort of red herring, but you say the delivery of misinformation is as valuable as the delivery of information. It's very sort of postmodern attitude, I guess.
Prescient.
Yes, well, yeah, quite.
Yeah.
It could be a lyric from this album, couldn't it?
Yes, it could. That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. It's kind of some sort of weird kind of sort of reflection on the beginnings of and how that we've transformed.
The way that it's put across there is that even the closing shot of that documentary where you're both sitting in the Jeep, and then it pans out and you're very clearly on a set. The whole idea of this is that, like, okay, well, if pop music's going to be manufactured bands, like, I'll give you the most manufactured band you can get.
Yeah, that was the idea. That was the idea.
But inherently, the major concern behind the band from you and the way that you're talking now, it remains true that, like, it's really about the human connection of the music making behind it. It's a more authentic thing than any of the fake bands fronted by real humans.
Yeah, of course. But no, I mean, and that comes back to what is music? Well, music is something that, you know, was kind of a gift to Homo sapiens and a way to just carry them far, far places in their imagination, communicate with things that were invisible. And, you know, it's just been used for so many different transportations. It is transcendental when applied properly, and true music is, because it's there. I don't say it's free for everyone, because it clearly isn't, but it is in a way. You know what I mean? It is. You can hear all music for free if you want to find it. I don't recommend you doing that. Obviously, not when it comes to this new album.
No.
I mean, if you, I mean, fine if you do, but I'm just saying I don't recommend it.
Some of these ideas that Gorillaz were ahead of the curve with, even the notion of having you standing behind a screen early on and your characters being the live performers, and now you have this sort of ersatz reflection of that in holograms, for example, like live holograms, which you were really doing a long time before everybody else with the sort of, there was an authentic idea behind it, and now it feels like this sort of tawdry recreation of that. All of these ideas that you have, does it feel strange to now see them reflected back at you?
Mainstream.
Yeah, but mainstream and also just sort of grubby.
Why are people doing it? They're doing it because, I don't know, I think you've got to know why you want to have a hologram. You've got to own that hologram. Do you know what I mean? Not just have one. Just because you got one doesn't mean shit.
Don't be sad for me. I'm a cartoon, and my intent is to breathe in a new world. Don't be sad for me.
The two closing songs here, I think, are quite poignant, really. There are a couple of moments. One in particular is Skinny Ape. The way that I infer it is that sort of 2D, speaking from inside the machine. It's quite scary. I don't know. It's sort of grappling with mortality or lack of aliveness. Yeah, it's a bit strange.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I say I've got bones, I've got jaded legs, not the kind that will win a race anytime, you know. It is. I mean, but it's also that sort of mad juxtaposition of the Amazon robots traveling down streets and going past homeless people, you know, totally impassive, and such a different kind of sort of vision of the future, those two things, you know. And so in Skinny Ape, kind of the ape is the human being, and they sort of get up at the end and just, I don't know, get the robot and run away with it and live happily ever after.
You close the album with, I think it's fair to say, like, quite an optimistic sentiment. This notion of, you know, we're all in this together till the end. Yeah,
I think so. Well, it's like most of my kind of stuff. It kind of can be taken both ways.
Do you feel optimistic?
Me? About, I mean, which part of the mess?
Well, I suppose about the part of the mess that Cracker Island tries to grapple with.
Well, you see that. I mean, yeah, it's like that. That is definitely a big problem. Is the, you know, the fakeness, but kind of, you know, that fakeness is also very real. So, what does that mean? You know, it's kind of, why is that? Why is something so fake so real in our lives? You know, the lies about lies are lies.
This feels like something that you could have also dropped into that documentary. Like that feels very delivery of misinformation is as valuable as delivery of information.
Yes, I suppose it is. I mean, get a good idea, flog it to death.
That was Damon Albarn in conversation with The Fader. Gorillaz' new album, Cracker Island, is out this Friday, February 24, via Parlophone and Warner Records. The Fader interview is engineered by Tony Giambroni. The executive producer is Alex Robert Ross, and the associate producer is Raphael Helfand. We'd like to thank Lauten Audio for providing our microphones. You can find them online at lautenaudio.com. And we'd like to thank James Ivey for providing our intro music. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd appreciate if you left a 5-star rating and review. If you like listening to The Fader, good news. We're now on the live radio app AMP. Download it from the App Store now. And keep an eye on thefader.com for essential music news, interviews, and essays. We'll be back next week with another episode of The Fader Interview. Goodbye until then. You know that one song you can't get enough of? Chances are it was made with a sample from Splice. Explore top packs made by your favorite producers, sketch out song ideas in seconds with Create Mode, and dive into a sample catalog that's so deep, it's dangerous. Find out why Splice is the industry's not-so-secret secret. Visit splice.com and try for free today.